Tyler Perry, once hailed as a visionary, a media mogul who built an empire from the ground up, is now facing a storm that no script could have predicted. Behind the billion-dollar studios and blockbuster deals, something dark is unraveling. Allegations, whispers, backstage backlash. And now, a voice that no one expected has entered the conversation. Janet Jackson. Yes, Janet has finally stepped out of the shadows and into the spotlight, not with a song, but with truth. And what she's revealing about Tyler Perry isn't just shocking, it's explosive. Hollywood is rattled, fans are torn, and the empire? It may never look the same again. In this video, we dive deep into what Janet said, why she said it now, and how it could expose the cracks behind one of the most powerful brands in Black entertainment history. This isn't your typical Hollywood drama. It's personal, it's explosive, and it's threatening to bring down an empire. Tyler Perry, long celebrated as a self-made media mogul, is now at the center of a firestorm he never saw coming. The man who built a billion-dollar brand with faith-based films and inspirational storytelling is facing backlash from all sides. Former collaborators, fed-up insiders, and now, the one voice no one expected, Janet Jackson. Yes, Janet has officially broken her silence, and what she's revealed has left Hollywood stunned. In this video, we're diving into the shocking truth behind Janet's decision to finally speak out, the alleged tension brewing for years, and why Perry's once loyal circle is starting to crumble. From casting controversies to unchecked power and whispered mistreatment, this is the side of Tyler Perry's empire the public was never meant to see. And trust us, once you hear it all, you won't look at either of them the same again. You won't believe what Janet alluded to in her most recent interview and why her remarks might change our perception of Tyler Perry's legacy. This isn't just another celebrity feud, so take a seat. Here's when things gets complicated. They didn't want this to be known, as you will soon discover. America loves to celebrate stories like Tyler Perry's rise from destitute to Hollywood heavyweight, a man who made his theater plays profitable, slept in his car, and defied the odds. He became a figure of inspiration, especially for Black creatives who yearn for ownership in a white-dominated field. And it's little wonder, through gospel-inspired storytelling, Perry developed a devoted following, made his media persona a household brand by the early 2000s, and took charge of his content in a manner that few Black filmmakers had ever done before. He created his own version of Hollywood rather than merely breaking into it. In 2019, Perry established the largest African-American-owned film production facility in the United States, Tyler Perry Studios, a 330-acre production lot in Atlanta. Although Perry's public persona has been carefully controlled, presenting him as a self-made tycoon, a spiritual leader, and a kind boss, insiders have long been whispering about what actually happens behind the scenes. Former actors and staff have initially been hesitant when discussing his play's poor representations, particularly of Black women, low pay, and problems with creative control. Many wondered why Perry's writing area notoriously contained just one writer himself, despite his wealth and access to elite talent. Perry even boasted on social media in 2020 that he wrote all of the scripts for his shows without a writer's room. Although his hustling was praised by some fans, many in the industry viewed it as a warning indication of ego-driven dominance that prevented cooperation or new ideas. An unnamed performer from a previous Bet project said that the work environment was quick, inexpensive, and emotionally taxing. He also mentioned that characters were frequently flat and cliched, and feedback was discouraged. The recurring complaints about Perry's portrayal of Black women in his shows and movies often as damaged, resentful, mistreated, or furious were much more alarming. Although his stories are emotionally compelling, critics contend that they frequently use negative cliches that perpetuate negative views. This leads us to a more profound query that has been going around for a while. Is Tyler Perry's business model based on empowering people or on subtly taking advantage of the people he says he wants to inspire? Even though these discussions have been going on in some circles, things didn't get particularly awkward until well-known people began to speak out. The entertainment industry is feeling the effects of Janet Jackson's recent entry into the conversation and her inferred remarks regarding Perry's tactics and intentions. However, things take a drastic turn at this point. Tyler Perry and Janet Jackson seem to get along well for years, at least in public, working together on projects such as Why Did I Get Married?, Additionally, its follow-up and Four Colored Girls made Janet one of the few A-list stars who agreed to collaborate with Perry's artistic vision. The combination of pop culture, aristocracy, and emerging Black Hollywood was hailed as a power move. However, the relationship, which many insiders said had been quietly developing for years, had fissures behind that polished partnership. Janet has now made the decision to speak. Janet was asked about the role she decided to play in Perry's movies and if she would consider working with him again. In a recent interview that wasn't intended to go viral but swiftly did. She seemed professional at first, but when pressed, she changed her tone from neutral to telling. "As a businessman, I greatly admire Tyler," Janet started. "However, I believe our perspectives on what constitutes art-based healing are different." After pausing, she said something that caused the room to become silent. Pain can no longer simply be recycled and reframed as empowerment. Fans and bloggers were rushing to figure out what she truly meant after that one remark sparked an online uproar. Close sources claim that Janet had long become dissatisfied with the depiction of Patricia in Why Did I Get Married? She played a character who was coping with infidelity, mental illness, and public humiliation while mourning the loss of a child. Like many of Perry's female characters, Patricia's path was viewed by critics as more about suffering as a show than real healing or development. According to reports, Janet pushed for a more complex portrayal of trauma and grief throughout filming, challenging parts of the script. However, Perry, who is known for maintaining strict creative control, reportedly rejected the majority of offers. One production insider said that Janet felt constrained and wondered if Perry's depiction of Black women was a reflection of healing or merely trauma repackaged as entertainment. Her uneasiness increased throughout the Colored Girls advertising cycle when a number of actresses, notably Whoopi Goldberg and Thandie Newton, voiced their displeasure with the way the movie changed the tone from the play. Despite maintaining her professional appearance, Janet was reportedly emotionally exhausted from playing consecutive parts that were based in intense suffering and hopelessness. Frequently with no chance of recovery, acting wasn't the only thing involved. It focused on the messages conveyed by such tales and how audiences, particularly Black women, assimilated them. Insiders claim that this is the reason Janet has subtly separated herself from Perry's endeavors for the last 10 years. The subtle barb at Perry's distinctive storytelling style that Janet made a point of emphasizing in her recent remarks was, "Black women deserve to see themselves in joy, in wholeness, not just in struggle." Fans swiftly took to social media, with some demanding Perry's response and others applauding Janet for her bravery. However, what distinguishes this viewpoint from that of another celebrity? The time is the problem. Janet Jackson's private life has long been well known. She seldom ever names names, gets involved in controversy, and hardly ever brings up previous partnerships unless asked to. It feels like a tipping point for her to say these things given that Tyler Perry is already dealing with a backlash from actors, writers, and even former employees. Social media critics and anonymous performers are no longer the only ones pointing out Perry's tendencies. In terms of her legacy, Janet Jackson is a cultural icon who has nothing to gain and everything to preserve. They really don't want you to hear this section. According to people close to Janet, she has spoken with other well-known Black women in Hollywood, and Perry's name has repeatedly come up in ways that point to a larger pattern of manipulation, control, and toned-down narrative that has left many actresses feeling ignored. Does this mark the start of an overdue reckoning? Who might be the next to step forward if Janet does? Although she may be the most well-known person to openly voice disapproval of Tyler Perry's artistic direction, Janet Jackson is by no means the first. A small choir of famous voices has become louder over time. Each one challenges the meticulously cultivated facade of Perry's empire and poses challenging queries on respect, control, and representation in the background. Let's begin with Monique, one of the most audacious voices. Monique was a well-liked comedian, an Academy Award-winning actress before her career took a dramatic turn when she started criticizing Hollywood gatekeeping. Additionally, Tyler Perry's name was prominently displayed in her accusations. Monique said in a now viral interview that Perry, Oprah Winfrey, and Lee Daniels were responsible for her Hollywood blacklisting when she declined to actively promote Precious during awards season without receiving compensation for the additional effort. She asserted that behind closed doors, Perry supported her position but refrained from openly defending her out of concern for studio and producer criticism. She claimed that the betrayal was particularly hurtful, coming from someone whose brand was based on positive black voices. In an emotional interview, Monique said, "You called me and told me I was right, but you didn't defend me. How is it possible for a black man who says he supports black women to let someone be dragged and remain silent?" Although her remarks generated a lot of criticism and praise, they also made it easier for other artists with comparable complaints to voice their concerns. Next up was seasoned director Spike Lee, who never holds back. When asked about Perry's body of work, Spike didn't hold back. At one point, he harshly characterized Tyler's films as coonery and buffoonery, which sparked a contentious discussion inside the business. It was not a personal matter for Lee. It focused on Perry's frequent usage of stereotypes, especially those connected to black males in drag, overly sexualized women, and oversimplified accounts of faith and trauma. Many started to question, is Tyler Perry truly creating space for nuanced black stories, or just profiting from trauma and caricature? Even stars in Perry's own films have voiced their opinions, despite Perry's initial dismissal of the criticism as elitist. In interviews, Tasha Smith, who portrayed Angela in Why Did I Get Married, has implied that there was little creative autonomy and that many cast members felt they couldn't question the screenplay without facing criticism. In contrast to Perry's solo-driven production method, she later switched to directing and producing herself, frequently highlighting the value of collaborative settings. Writers have also resisted behind the scenes. A group of writers who had contributed to Perry's TV series, such as House of Pain, made an attempt to form a union in 2008. Perry allegedly dismissed them without engaging in negotiations, saying he was not aware of their organization. Industry unions strongly criticized the move, which portrayed Perry as someone who was more concerned with holding onto power than encouraging black creatives. It is more difficult to overlook the pattern in the present. The industry is paying close attention as a result of the following: poor compensation for supporting performers, one-man writing teams, recurring stories of hardship, a lack of creative freedom for collaborators, and now Janet Jackson, who hardly ever discusses previous collaborations, speaking out. Speaking up is no longer a source of fear. The real story here isn't about hurt feelings or creative disagreements. It's about the systemic patterns within Tyler Perry's empire. Tyler has done incredible things, but that doesn't make him untouchable. One Hollywood insider told Variety, "We're past the point of protecting powerful men just because they've achieved success. Since he owns his studio, writes his screenplays, and finances his films, there have long been patterns that have gone unchecked." Critics say that in the absence of checks and balances, the environment becomes one in which ego goes unchecked and voices, particularly those of women, collaborators, and the very communities his work purports to serve, go unheard. Therefore, the question now becomes, how many more people will speak up? Will Tyler Perry eventually answer not with social media postings or PR remarks, but with actual accountability? Since this criticism isn't going away, and if additional as names surface, this may mark the start of a thorough re-examination of Tyler Perry's identity as the brand's creator. The core of the escalating controversy surrounding Tyler Perry is not merely celebrity disputes or behind-the-scenes control, but rather something much more profound and intimate for his core fan base. Perry's empire has been largely based on the support of black women, especially older and religious audiences, for more than 20 years. From stage plays to popular movies like Temptation and Diary of a Mad Black Woman, his stories speak to churchgoers who identify with his character's adversity, heartbreak, and tenacity. However, a more vocal generation of black women has been protesting in recent years, questioning why they are consistently depicted as angry, abused, bitter, and damaged. Perry's stories frequently portray black women as the objects of pain and punishment, whether it is infidelity, rape, assault, or desertion, according to critics, despite his vows to elevate them. Even in recent projects like A Fall from Grace and Acrimony, the women are emotionally broken, mentally unstable, or morally compromised. A woman endures terrible suffering only to find strength through a religious awakening, a man's apology, or simply by enduring in silence. Where's the joy? Where's the self-love? Where's the evolution beyond pain? Popular cultural commentators have taken to TikTok, YouTube, and podcasts to analyze Perry's recurrent themes. Even though the men are frequently presented as victims or redeemed by the end of the story, the conclusion is that Tyler Perry doesn't write black women. Instead, he writes what he believes pain looks like on a black woman's body. One critic wrote in a widely shared essay, "We don't need to be fixed by faith. It's a message that over time becomes harmful, especially to young black girls who absorb the idea that abuse equals love or that redemption only comes through pain." Thousands of viewers have come forward to say that they once saw themselves in his work before realizing they were being portrayed as hopeless unless they suffered. The backlash is not just academic, it's personal. The ironic twist is that, although Tyler Perry has publicly said that he models many of his characters after his mother, whom he describes as strong, devoted, and devout despite being in an abusive marriage, critics now contend that his trauma has become his lens, distorting his portrayal of women who are worthy of more than just perseverance. Janet Jackson's recent remarks have rekindled the global conversation about the value of diverse storytelling within the Black experience, even among well-known Black female creatives like Ava DuVernay and Issa Rae. These stories should allow women to be flawed, funny, joyful, messy, and liberated, rather than just beaten down and saved by prayer. Because it's a sign that this is about more than just a man when a pop icon who doesn't often speak up decides to draw attention to Perry's emotional framework. It's about a movement that calls for diverse writer rooms, equitable and empowering workspaces, nuanced representation, and an end to trauma porn masquerading as redemption. So where does this leave Tyler Perry? He's still a powerful figure, still owns his studio, and still creates content at a breakneck pace. But the once untouchable empire is now being scrutinized by its creators. "We're not saying cancel him," one writer wrote recently. "We're saying hold him accountable because even in Black hands, power without responsibility turns into injustice."